Hello there again. It's Winifred Davis, and this is part two of, I believe, it will be a three-part series. So, before we begin with the messages, please note the following. It's very important. Power does not corrupt, and absolute power does not corrupt. Absolutely. Power reveals who we are, the state of our soul, and its weaknesses. Money is not the root of all evil. We need it to survive in the societies that we have created. There's nothing wrong with having a lot of money. And if you do have a lot of money, do not feel guilty about it. Money is an inanimate object. It cannot speak, walk, smell, taste, or feel. Money needs a puppeteer or an animator to animate it. The puppeteer or the animator, by their actions with that money, will determine whether it is evil or good. By the way, I do not like to use the word evil because it gives us a get out of jail free card. To commit vile acts that we can blame on the devil or demons and abscond responsibility for our own actions. We are our own demons and devils. Those among us who claim that the devil does not exist, but that demons do, and infest us or infect us, enter us to do vile deeds. There are no demons and devils from this galaxy, this universe, or any other. We and we alone are responsible for our own actions, whether we are in the body physical, in this earthly plane, or on the spiritual one. Within the context of our senses, our prison bars on earth, taste, feel, touch, hear, smell, sight, the spiritual, outside of those prison bars, we are told should be taken with a grain of salt. So what I grudgingly say here is that the following is for entertainment purposes only. Nonetheless, judge for yourself. My record stands on its own. Now, I'm going to first repeat messages, and I'm sorry I'm reading, but I just don't want to forget anything, okay? I told you that before in the first video. Now, I'm going to repeat the messages that are available in video 6 and 7. It's a lot of them, so I'm just going to repeat some of them because I will use them in the context of the new messages. Now, I refer to my books and videos on YouTube, which I will list below with the last 2 books, okay, that I wrote. This one, it's Politics, Gender, and the Octopus of Strange Bedfellows. And this one, Thoughts on the Past, the Masks and Equal Opportunity. And I also refer to this one. It is a collection of the essays that came before or made up the videos. Without a Speck of Gray, the black and white of truth and justice. And now these books, they explain in detail what is happening today from both the temporal lens and the spiritual lens. It gives us a step-by-step view of some reincarnated souls, including a lot of the Nazi hierarchy And I proved them by showing different things, different facts, different histories being repeated right now. It's very interesting read, and showing that all of us live in glass houses, and the masks that we wear, color, race, social, economic status, are irrelevant through the eyes of the soul, the spiritual lens, and historical grudges and wars, totally relevant through the eyes of the soul. Now, without further ado, I will begin. I will first give a few of my previous messages before giving ones that I have received before my last video that was posted almost a year ago. I was busy writing. Weeks before the pager and walkie-talkie terrorist attack by Israel in Lebanon that killed and injured not only Hezbollah members, but also many civilians, including children and medics in hospitals, we must wonder, or perhaps not, why Israel regularly targets medical professionals. The intention of genocide is clear. I memorialized, quote, spy in the camp, spy in the camp, Hezbollah, watch out, Iran, beware, billionaires and millionaires. Later messages in the weeks to follow elaborated on this message. And in the wee hours of September, wee hours of the morning of September 17th, I'm sorry, I gesticulate a lot, 2024, hours before the pager event, I traveled once more in sleeping state and saw attacks that kept coming one after the other, with each one seeming to be the last, but each time it seemed to be the last, it was not. I also saw Benjamin Netanyahu dressed in soiled light brown khaki pants and a dark blue polo shirt, giving a speech at the end of which he went into a back room with someone. I will not now disclose that. Even though it's been 2 years almost, I'm still not going to disclose it at this time. I've only given a summary of the vision, the pants, the stain and soil and colors, and the individual with whom he retired to a back room are very significant. I leave it at that. On September 18th, 2024, I was given the message, trap for Israel as they enter Lebanon. Indeed, at least 8 of their soldiers were killed, perhaps more, and perhaps dozens more wounded on or about October 2nd, 2024. Now, skeptics might say that soldiers are killed, for it is war. So there's nothing in that. The nature and the number of injured and dead and the hasty withdrawal for that particular foray, which was the first one into Lebanon in that period, was not an everyday occurrence, at least not for the Israeli army. On September 20th, 2024, at 4:38 a.m., I was given the message, and this is for entertainment purposes only, I grudgingly say that, Netanyahu will have a sudden stop. Something is going to come out of left center. What will halt him? Please note that the message did not say that will halt him. It said what will halt him. On September 21st, 2024, at 3:15 a.m., as I sat in my office working, I was given the message, if Israel doesn't get all the all-out war response from Hezbollah that they're awaiting. Their final egg will be the assassination of Nasrallah between now and the October surprise for Trump. There, and indeed, they did assassinate him. One day less, 1 week. And then the message continued. There is cash being given to spies in Lebanon, being funded by Israeli millionaires and billionaires. Remember another message that I had weeks earlier. Then it says, Blinken, McGurk, Kirby, Sullivan, and I won't say the other name, are very complicit. This was a very long message, but as per the instructions of my guides, I will not at this time, even though it's 2 years, they haven't given me permission yet, publish the rest of the long paragraph of the messages. I was also instructed not to mention one of the names which I was given. Then it also said, when Kirby, that's John Kirby, the spokesman, I think it was for the Pentagon, when Kirby lies, he scratches his hand and twists his mouth. That's how spirit works. Blinken, according to the records, continues. Blinken, according to the records, will be held to account in this lifetime. Karma, the law of cause and effect. This is what my guides mean. Each of us must answer to that. Sometimes we must face the consequences of our actions in this, our current lifetime. Although some appear to escape the consequences of their actions in our imposter justice of man, when they leave the earthly plane, they will have to face those consequences in a subsequent lifetime, again, in the earthly plane. We cannot cheat karma. Karma is a universal law. The laws of the universe, unlike the laws of man, is without favor or fear. Each of us must answer to them. There are no exceptions. Mr. Blinken will face some of those consequences in this lifetime. Others might appear to escape. And I explain karma in detail in these books and other books that I've written. Then it goes on and it said he never offered condolences for the beheaded Palestinian children, but was quick to offer condolences to the Jews who do not consider themselves Israeli and are not, because the Golan Heights is legally Syrian territory. The Jews whose children were probably killed by a rocket fired by the IDF. The Great Persia, false flag that would be, false flag operation. Now I've separated the messages as best as I could. Now some of my guides sometimes refer to Iran or Iran as the Great Persia. They have lived in the Great Persia, as have I in other lifetimes. Iran, like most of the countries in the world, including those who believe that the global south, the others, as they are considered by the people, the West people of Western civilization, stand on the low ground of their moral high ground. The pretenders to the throne of virtue need to do better. We should never usurp the free will of others. We all live in glass houses. In other words, Iran needs to do better. So does America. And many other countries. We all need to do better. Now I'm going to repeat a message given in 2024 for clarity because it has unfolded, is unfolding, and will unfold. On October 9th, 2024, we memorialize, and sometimes I'll say we instead of I, because my guides are with me, so I'm used to saying we sometimes. Memorialize a long series of messages. We will list only a part of them here as instructed by my guides. Iran, saboteur on the ground, eliminating scientists, sabotage of facilities, target in the Iranian parliament to eliminate members of the government, Khamenei, IRGC, oil refineries and nuclear facilities on the list, along with hospitals and airfields, intelligence centers, missile museum as well. Malware planted in computers will be activated as the lights go out and the ships also targeted. Well, we had one today, right? It was torpedoed near Sri Lanka. This is the plan. Men will swoop in to take control and install the new Shah. That is the ending of the cycle. When I had my dream that I saw and witnessed the events of October 7th, 2023, part of that dream showed me the peacock throne. You can read on that in videos or listen to it, videos 6 and 7. Continues. Aim is to break the great Persia apart into tiny bits, and so no truly powerful Muslim country will stand. Unintended consequences. American intelligence and weapons and agents will be guiding this mission. Hello. Indeed. That's also what we saw during those protests in January and February. They were there, along with Mossad, the CIA, committing some of the most heinous acts like burning mosques, beheading people. Yes, Iran, crackdown was brutal, but a lot, perhaps most of the brutality was conducted by Israel and the United States. I don't need anyone to tell me that. My guides tell me. I believe them. And later on, we'll go in and show how the Israelis, they will kill their own to advance their supremacist ideology and practices. And I don't mince words. And I don't indulge in conspiracy theories. Yes, it continues. There's a plan, a plot between some in the IRGC and wider Iran. Israel, the Sunnis in the south, Americanist neocons, both Democratic and Republican, from different administrations, and the son of the Shah and his group. We do not need 4 eyes for this. You don't have to be a psychic, in other words, to realize this. The message continues. The Bay of Pigs and the Iranian expedition. The regime change might backfire. Documents seized during raids being utilized. Those are raids in Syria, including some very highly secretive raids in underground bunkers. My guide showed me. Lebanon was a dry run. In other words, Lebanon showed when they decapitated the leadership and they planted things long before in the phones and the pagers and activated. Same MO here. And look at this. The Bay of Pigs they showed me, that was 2 years ago. And the Iranian expedition, the Bay of Pigs was Cuba, where we know that they're planning on invading Cuba right now. And look at the Iranian expedition. The universe. The last quote that I will say here was from what was a very long, detailed thread, was a question. Is part of the IRGC waiting to stage a coup? Now, please check videos 6 and 7 for some of these events, and of course, the book that unfolded concerning the IRGC. Many of these messages from this thread from 2024 are still unfolding and going on, and they will still be unfolding. I will not elaborate on the last sentence, the last quote at this time. We will hear of this later, but keep it in mind when my guides ask to revisit it. It is multi-layered. One of the unintended consequences that the West and Israel might come to regret. Al-Aqsa and Iran. On March 18th, 2025, at 7:40 p.m., I was given the following message, which I memorialized in a shorter version because I was doing my 8-kilometer daily walk, and I never really, because I walk at a very fast pace, and I never really stop or interrupt my walk. I will try to keep the message in my head, but for the first time in years, I actually had to stop to memorialize this message because of the images I was given, and my guides were saying, put it down, put it down. Now I memorialize the extended version at 11:55 a.m. the March 19th, the following day, 2025, that's last year. Now I posted this message, that was the last video that I did in March of last year, on the Al-Aqsa event and the attack on Iran by Israel and America, the attack that would come in June, because they showed me approximately when that attack would come. This was in March, they showed me it happened in June. My time frame, as I said, for the attack on Iran was accurate. Now I memorialize all my messages, so I don't just make them up, I memorialize them. There are parts concerning Al-Aqsa that might yet unfold, but I pray it is not written in stone so that it will not, because I love history. But what is written is written. I've only given a part of the thread as instructed by my guides. This is a quote. Tunnels dug underneath will be used to plant explosives to bomb the mosque or set it on fire. This will be the final act to get rid of Palestinians or any Muslim claim to the area. That is why the US and Israel are bombing Yemen, Syria, and Lebanon. And we started bombing Gaza and imprisoned the West Bank. They will soon start on Iran. The letter from the US to Iran is a distraction. The Zionist Christians see this as their holy war and the greatest chance to evict Muslims from their made-up Greater Israel and accelerate the second coming of Christ. But what they don't realize is that the Zionist Jews, who are also the head of this, who will more than likely set the fire, they will soon, after they're finished with the Muslims, watch out for the tomb of the Holy Sepulchre. Perhaps the only thing that might save it is tourism. I just mentioned that because as I was reading this, I was getting that message. Now, I didn't know whether or not there were tunnels dug underneath Al-Aqsa. So when I got home, I checked. Yes, there are tunnels there. And it's making the buildings around, because of those tunnels that Israel is digging, making the buildings where Palestinians live as well to be standing on shaky grounds. Now, memorialized on Sunday, September 28th, 2025. On Friday night, which was September 26th, but I memorialized it a couple of days later, I traveled to Israel. I astral travel and found myself among throngs of people. As I walked through, I heard planning, but what exactly I could not hear clearly. Immediately, as I started walking away, Netanyahu approached me. Remember, I'm a shaman, so I travel in and out between the spiritual realm and the earthly realm often. Netanyahu approached me, wanting to know what I heard. I did not respond and traveled back. I can sometimes overhear conversations thousands of miles away, or travel to future events, as I did in Baghdad many months before the US invasion. As I stood there in Baghdad, all the buildings were leveled. There was twisted metal, acrid smoke, and ashes and smoke rose up from the ground. I was bare feet, and then my feet started to burn, and then I traveled back, and believe me, for 1 week, or almost a week, my foot, I believe it was my left foot, I could hardly put it down because it burned like anything. The same thing happened in 9/11. I astral traveled again. This was at 4 a.m. in the morning. And I saw all these, but it didn't look like it was in New York. It was in Jamaica. And I saw all these, the remains of all these people, all these bodies. And they were covered in white sheets. There were so many of them that they actually had to leave them outside on the streets, and they lined the streets. And then I heard and saw them waving. And amongst those waving was also my stepdad, my beloved stepdad. And he died a month later. But they were all waving and saying, "Tell the world we are gone. Tell the world goodbye." And I just sat up like a robot in the bed and said, "I'm back," just like that. And I knew I just astral traveled. And immediately I heard the phone ringing, and I went to get the phone. And it was a girlfriend telling me, "Turn your TV on. They're about to hit the second tower." And one more incident I will give you. Something happened in Jamaica. This was in about 93. And so I had to make an emergency flight. So I had to stop in New York, catch a red eye to Miami, and I arrived in Jamaica on Sunday. Now, while I was in the airplane on the way to Miami from New York, I put my head back in my seat and I could hear, I traveled to a house in Jamaica and I could hear the conversation. So when I went to Jamaica, I told my husband he preferred to live in Jamaica and only visit for 2 days and then back. So it was back and forth, back and forth. The airplane was my second home. And I told him the conversation I'd heard. And the next day, he called me. I was working actually in the office, tending to some clients in the temple. And he called me. And I went outside and he told me, please repeat what you told me, that conversation you heard. There was a woman sitting beside him. And I repeated the conversation and she opened her mouth. Like that she went. And he said to her, you see, I told you what my wife told you. And she was amazed because I had repeated exactly. She was at that house. And so she thought he should hear that conversation. And she told him, and it was exactly so. So, some of us do eavesdrop sometimes when the spirits want us to eavesdrop. On Saturday, February 27th, now it's still the same message. Sorry for diverting, and digressing. At 11:20 p.m., this was on the Saturday. I couldn't hear that message, remember, on the Friday, or couldn't remember it when Netanyahu tried to find out what exactly I had overheard with their planning. Well, the guy said, planning afoot, mischief, PR not working, world turning away, Israel will launch some false flag operations in multiple cities, including at least one Muslim or Arab state, North America, in Europe, possibly somewhere in East Asia or the islands. Blame it on Iran and claim Hezbollah was in collusion, possibly Hamas. This is going to galvanize the attack, the world to attack the great Persia. America will be in the know, as well as its wingman, England, the UK. For all who have for all who have eyes and ears, the question to ask is, why would the great Persia give unto its foe a ladder to climb out of the pit it has dug for itself? Well, that pit that Israel dug for itself concerns Gaza, because it revealed to the world what so many others in the global south knew was happening in Gaza, that the Western media and the Western governments pretended didn't exist. The slow rolling genocide for decades, the subjugation of and the incarceration of children, treating them as if they're adults, having them locked up for years, and its justice system using the draconian laws of British Mandate Palestine would keep those children and others. They were not prisoners, they were hostages, where they endured sexual, psychological, and physical abuse and torture. But Nothing remains hidden in the dark forever. It was an unflagpole secret, but the Western media and their governments, they billowed the smoke so that many in those countries could not see, but now it was open. So that's the pit that Israel dug for itself. And because it's so brazen with it 24/7, we have to watch all that horror. It's too late for them to put that genie back in the bottle. I did say that Israel would create false flags in a Middle Eastern country. We await that. Iran has denied bombing the refinery in Saudi Arabia. I wonder who might have done that, if that's the case. This would be, of course, to widen the war, as the message said, or asking others to attack the Great Persia and destroy the prosperity also of the Gulf countries, which we see what's happening now. Sure, America hasn't protected them. Yeah, it hasn't. It's very sad. In false flag operations, Israel will kill even its own to advance its supremacy. As we can see in the 1950-51 Baghdad bombings, when its agents bombed the businesses and a synagogue of Iraqi Jews, killing Jews, including a 12-year-old boy, hoping to convince those Iraqi Jews that they should hasten to leave Iraq and migrate to Israel. This was to build up the population of Israel to outnumber Palestinians and affect the Palestinians' right of return. UNRWA represents that. As long as UNRWA remains, the Palestinian right of return remains. That is why there has been a decades-long mission to destroy UNRWA, with propaganda, lies, destruction of its headquarters, and the list goes on, in collusion with America, the neocons and the Zionists and the Zionist lobby. Before UNRWA came into existence, this was in 1949, I believe, a year after the Nakba, and a year after Israel, the United Nations recognized Israel officially and drew the line. Even though they gave to Israel, they had less of a population, but they got more of Palestinian lands. And then, of course, Palestinians they had to wait. They're still waiting, but we'll get to that. Before UNRWA came into existence to help Palestinian refugees in Gaza, for example, it was the Quakers, that face of the light, of the two faces of America. They were the ones who helped to set up shelter, provide water and food, and a means for waste to be discarded in Gaza. And it was the Palestinians who had to make, let's say, the desert bloom, not the Zionist Jews. They took what was in full bloom from the Palestinians. These are facts, not conspiracy theories. These are facts. The records are there. The photographs are there. And they themselves, and if you read my book, I have pages of quotes out of the horse's mouth from the founding fathers and the leaders of the Zionist Jews in Israel as to their aim, what they intended to do, how they were going to do it. They were not ashamed to say they were supremacists and they came to take away Palestinian lands. And that Palestinian, some said, they wouldn't blame them for hating them because they would too if someone came and took away their homes and their lands, their crops that they had had for generations, hundreds, thousands of years. The other face of America is that of the darkness. And that includes the Confederacy, the white supremacist groups. America has so many. America is a breeding ground for cults. I discussed that in the book, and extremists. The Ku Klux Klan and Daughters of the Confederacy, Jim Crow, Christian Zionists, and all things that led Hitler, Adolf Hitler, to see America, and he said it, as the Aryan paradise. The CIA and Mossad were really involved in burning the mosque, as I said, in Iran, and some of the horrible violence of the recent protests there. Do not let anyone gaslight you. Look at Gaza. We know the brutality. My guides tell me that. And they do say, yes, the crackdown by the Iranian government was also brutal. As a follow-up message to weeks ago, that Israel has promised that it would ethnically cleanse Gaza quickly, and that is why the USA, that was back last year sometime, ended peace talks along with the preparation to strike Qatar and Hamas leadership, baiting them with peace proposal. Note here that Witkoff is like Blinken. Blinken, though, knew what he was doing and was the strategist. Witkoff, he doesn't know what he's doing. He's a willing pawn. Iran was and is expected to honor an agreement that none of the other parties do. That is with the nuclear agreement they negotiated with the Obama administration. Europe, subservient to the US, could not live up to its side of the agreement once the US pulled out. According to Blinken, this is now after he left office, Iran was prepared to sign a new deal in which it was prepared to give up even more than it had given up in that deal negotiated with the Obama administration. And the Europeans, France, Germany, and the UK knew that. They have been disingenuous. It is a plot. They have been promised that Iran just needs a tap on the shoulder. Remember, this was in 2025. And indeed, it would fall over. That's what they were promised. They have been weakened, they were told. And Mertz said the quiet part out loud when he said that Israel and America were doing the dirty job, the dirty work that needed to be done with Iran when they attacked the nuclear sites. This was discussed without a speck of gray. It would be a double win for the Europeans because the puppet they would put in power, the Shah's son or somebody else, would be willing to sacrifice the Shah's son, who is willing to sacrifice because he agrees with this, the innocent, and swoop in on the wings of the vultures and scavengers on foot. He would sign over Iran's oil and gas resources to Western countries and Europe would then have another source of oil that they desperately need. The other reason is that Russia would be one partner short. No one cared about the danger and possible radiation danger that bombing the nuclear facilities and sites. No one cared about the danger it posed to Iran and its people and the neighbors in other countries, in neighboring countries. Why would they care? Why should they? If you're a member of the different groups that comprise the majority of the world, and that means also if you're Muslim, because Muslims are target right now, meaning that you're not white European or of white European Christian descent, you are subhuman and a child at best. Paternalism. Why should they care? It is not double standards now, because double standards apply only to equals. That is the white, Eurocentric, racist, supremacist, colonial mindset. They still have not gotten over, no matter the beautiful words they utter. Words belie thoughts that actions reveal. And I will state something that I mentioned in the book. Leave it alone at this time. Now, Israel, of course, is a special case. It has its own white supremacist problems of European-descended, white-looking Jews versus the black, fallacious, darker Sephardics and Mizrahi from North Africa, and original Sephardics, the Iberian Peninsula, and Yemen, Iraq, and I believe Iraq has or had the oldest Jewish population in the world. After, if you go through BC and Mesopotamia and all of that. So, as I said, Israel has its own white supremacist and racism problem to face. And of course, all of them, the Falachas, the Mizrahi, the Sephardics, they're all, of course, doing their nonsense. They're evil in Gaza. But when there's no boogeyman, and that's one of the reasons why supremacist ideology and practices look for forever wars, because then they have to deal with themselves and the problems that they have, and Israel has and will have a big problem when they are not fighting forever wars. And then, of course, this is all craziness as far as I'm concerned. And as far as the eyes of the soul is concerned, they're all masked and they're irrelevant, because one day we might be black in one lifetime, as I am now, kaleidoscope of colors and ethnicities and cultures. And in another lifetime, many lifetimes, I lived in England, I lived in ancient Egypt, I lived in India, I was Buddhist, I was a hobo in Russia, in Vladivostok, I was in China, I was all over the world. So it's totally irrelevant. Now, with regards to the bombing of the nuclear facilities in Iran. There was no comment, not even a peep from the IAEA. The West has given Iran and its people enough basket for carry water. In other words, they've given Iran and its people a basket to carry water. Now we know that it is impossible to carry water in a basket without waterproof lining. It is like beating a man with a stick, standing with one boot on his neck and the other on his chest, and telling him, expecting him to breathe or answer your questions or to get up and run and fetch you water. Of course he can't, so you beat him even more. This is an instance where death before dishonor applies. These are the guardians of Western civilization. The great Persia is much older. Now, oil. It's all about the oil. Drill, baby, drill. And if you go in my book, I'll tell you how that is playing out. A replay of oil. Whoever controls the oil controls the world. In World War II, Hitler needed to control the oil, and I'll get into that. And right now, with the reincarnated Nazis and from other conflict zones and what have you, all throughout the ages, throughout history, are gathered here. And if you read this, I tell you why it is so. And they're strategically placed right now. And it is all about the oil. I'm gonna end this soon and then do another video. But I will first finish with these messages that I have received recently enough. On February 19th, 2026, 1:12 a.m., I received the following message. So that was maybe about 2 weeks ago. The rivers will run red with the blood of the innocent of the great Persia, as it will run red with the blood of the temptress. That's what my guides call Netanyahu. He is America's temptress, and its hostage, America. Israel's hostage is America. Compromat, as they are locked in a death spiral. What a pity. It said something else as well, but I won't say that right now. Control the oil, and you will control the world. Unintended consequences await all. They saw that more than 2 weeks, but less than 3. There might be an end. But let's see, time is not something that, we're good at, or that they dwell in, because there's so much to play, like free will, and we all have free will, so we can change. There are some things that are written in stone, and a lot that are not. Turkey and Pakistan. This message was memorialized, though, last year, July 15, 2025 at 11:16 a.m. Turkey must beware of attack and sabotage by Israel. Israel has established a modus operandi, and it believes it works, and it will work for Turkey. So Turkey, Pakistan, Egypt, and all other Muslim states must be wary of the pager incident. Drones strategically placed in their countries years ahead of schedule, and spies as there is enough cash to splash around from Zionists, Israelis, and Americans, including the neocons, as in Lebanon and Iran. Turkey is being set up from Cyprus and elsewhere. Erdogan is on the assassination list, as well as fomenting of civil unrest in Turkiye, as they did in Syria. This is with the collusion of the CIA. Nothing should be taken for granted. Mossad, with the collusion of the UK, is embedded with the UK and MI6 in Cyprus. There is no difference between them. As in the Crusades, Richard the Lionheart knew that Cyprus is critical when it comes to the West, and Europe especially, as the West loses control in Muslim states. Turkey must also know that Israel, with the approval of America, will try to attack it, even though they shot down a drone or missile they said that was heading, NATO did, from Iran. Maybe it was going to some American base. It cannot, I continue the message, it cannot depend on NATO, as the Europeans are spineless at best, but in collusion at the worst to do so. Pakistan is aware of its dilemma from the South and from Israel and America. Although Pakistan is plagued with confusion and violence, much of the recent goings on, and there's been quite a bit, is being instigated by Israel and its neighbor to the south, who has found kinship as it aims to destroy its Muslim population of more than 200 million, the third largest in the world. It is what some say is a genocide in which it is closely following the playbook of Israel, the masters of how to commit slow rolling genocide. And I go into my book, go into that topic as well in my book, with how in India they're going about it, terrorizing Muslims. But it would be remiss of me not to say that Hindus face problems as well in Bangladesh. Well, you know, my goodness, religion would be, were it not for religion, I think we would have a little more peace in this world. And it's all just craziness. If we would only learn that the masks that we wear in any lifetime are irrelevant. Now, where am I here? This message was memorialized on July 21st, 2025 at 9:09 a.m. Once again, it repeats the previous message because it is important for Turkey to understand. Quote, Turkey is on the roster as well. Its leader is slated for assassination, and the country instability. The same modus operandi is afoot, and that's the pager stuff. Cyprus will, as it did in the Crusades, be important in any attack on Turkey. Azerbaijan was shown as an area of the launching for the attacks in a later message, but I didn't memorialize that. However, what I remembered, this is not to be taken that any such use of Azerbaijan would be in collusion with its government. The message did not say that. Now, I think I should probably end this here. The next video that I'm going to do, I will be speaking about the messages I've received for Israel. And the messages I have for Europe and for the Gulf states. They had better beware of the technology that they buy. And so, as I said, I'm going to end it here and continue another video. That will be part 3. One Divine Universal Love. I'll be back.